Hello and welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew, and tonight I want to talk more about Biomutant on the PlayStation 5. So, we all know that the PlayStation 5 version is going to be running this game at 1080p upscaled to 4K at 60 frames a second. And that is running the backward compatible mode. So, I've been seeing on Twitter all day, a lot of PlayStation fans are really upset at the performance of this, seeing as the Xbox Series X version will be running this game out of the gate at 4K 60 frames a second. I've seen a lot of people blaming the developer for this, saying that the developer can't develop and stuff like that. Obviously, they know what they're doing if they can run it at 4K 60 on the Xbox Series X using the back compat code from the Xbox One version. This basically means two things. Either the Xbox One X was more powerful than we even thought, or the PlayStation 5 isn't as smart as it should be. I kind of knew. I've known that we were going to get to this point like pretty quick. As soon as the Xbox was really starting to take advantage of the technology that's built into that machine, I knew we were going to start seeing that gap widen, and it was going to get bigger and bigger. I mean, there's still a lot of people out there saying that because of like early in the Xbox and PS5 or Xbox Series X and PS5 generation, there were games coming out that were performing better on the PlayStation 5. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Every single one of these games were last gen, are cross gen games. Okay, so basically, is what was happening. Alright. If you bought a PlayStation 5, let's put it this way. If you went out and you bought a PlayStation 5, I have a PlayStation 5, I have an Xbox Series X, okay? If you went out and you bought this console expecting that 8K and that 4K, 120 frames a second that are up there to be completely across the whole generation of every game, third party and first party, we have precedent with the PS4 Pro to show us that that's not the case. Okay? Sony first party developers are amazing at what they do. They're going to squeeze every single drop of power out of this PlayStation 5, and their games are going to look better and run better than anything else that comes to the PlayStation 5. That's just a given. I mean, that's true. The PlayStation 5, most third-party developers are only going to use the 9.2 or 9.3 teraflops of base PS5. Okay, it does do 10.28 teraflops, but that's in boost mode, and that's not consistent. That will not run consistent. Developers are not going to put that resource. Third-party developers are not going to go through all that resource to build that when they can just especially with nowadays, everybody is like, especially with nowadays, okay, you had developers are going to use basically what's on tap with the 9.2 teraflops. It's probably easier for them, especially when they're scaling games across all consoles. Okay, this only goes for cross gen, I think after we get into the PlayStation and Xbox Series X cycle where they're not doing any more cross-gen, I think the more developers will take more advantage of the 10.28 teraflops. But that's going to be later in the generation. You're looking maybe 3 years. 3 years before that's the case. Everybody right now, the third-party developers are probably only using the base clock for their games. Okay, I've seen this personally. There's a lot of games out there that do not get covered by Digital Foundry or any of the other guys that do the analysis on them, okay? We got Ride 4. I bought it on both consoles because I wanted to see. Ride 4 does not look as good as the Xbox Series X version. It looks like 1800p and 4K. You have MXGP20 that has a native PlayStation 5 version, but the Xbox is only running the Xbox One X version. The Xbox Series X is only running the Xbox One X version. The only thing that really looks different on the PlayStation 5 version is the menus are crisp and clean, and it looks like the dirt textures are a bit higher. There's more texture in like the dirt and stuff like that. But when it comes to the picture, again, MXGP 2020 looks like it is dynamic resolution, and it runs mostly around, like a 1800p. Sometimes it looks cleaner, sometimes it doesn't. You go off a jump and you're coming down the road, everything just gets blurry. On the Xbox Series X, that's running the backward compatible version for the Xbox One X, like this game looks crisp 4K the whole time. It doesn't blur out, none of that stuff. The menus are blurry though. They look like the ups. Yeah, the menus clearly look better on the PlayStation 5 version, but that is really the only thing. And the dirt textures. That's really it. Everything else is cleaner, crisper, and better looking on the Xbox. The performance looks better. Everything just looks better on the Xbox. The Xbox version for MXGP 2020. On Monster Energy Supercross 4, I did not buy both versions of that, but I can confirm that had the MXGP 20 gotten a native Xbox Series X version, it would look just as good, just as crisp, just as clear as the Xbox Series X version of Monster Energy Supercross 4. There's no question. It would definitely look just as nice and just as clean as that version does. The menus on that are better looking than the ones on the PlayStation 5 for the other game. Then you get into WRC9. Okay, on the Xbox Series X version, the game runs at 60 frames a second with way less screen tearing than the PlayStation 5 version, and it holds almost pretty close to native 4K. There's no stair-stepping on the hood, when you're driving in bonnet cam. Whereas on the PlayStation 5, you can see the stair-stepping, the lower resolution on the hood of the car in bonnet cam. Obviously, that's running, and the PlayStation 5 version looks washed out, whereas the Xbox Series X version takes advantage of the auto HDR. It looks a lot better. This whole thing about the PlayStation 5 being a better console from like fanboys and stuff, like that's just not the case, guys. Like, yes, there were some games at the beginning that did come out looking better. Almost all of those games have been patched, and they now either run just identical with parity, like most developers, some developers are going to pick the PlayStation 5 as their base console to develop the game and then port to other ones. Like that's always been the case. There's going to be the developers out there that are going to do that. There's going to be other developers that are going to develop on the Xbox Series X, and then that console is going to get the best version. That's just how it goes. Okay, Sony is the market leader in the console space. Like, they are, no question about that. They sell more consoles, they sell more games. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's been now for 5 generations in a row. Sony is the market leader. So Sony should set some standards. But this generation, it's a little backwards, okay? The Xbox came out. The Xbox Series X is a seamless experience. Like, it's freaking good. It's smart. It just works. The PlayStation 5, there's a bunch of hoops you got to jump through. You got to make sure you're downloading the right game. Your saves don't freaking load. They don't transfer from PS4 to PS5. Like, it's been kind of a headache on the PlayStation 5. Even for me, like, I've been a PlayStation guy for a long time. And I can tell you right now that there's something really different about the beginning of this generation. Like, I just bought this 980 Pro Samsung 1 terabyte hard drive to put in my PS5, but they still haven't unlocked that bay yet, and it's been 6 months. Like, it's 6 months, okay? Like, there's something off about this generation, especially with the PlayStation. I don't mean to be the bringer of bad news, but like, I don't think that the PlayStation 5 is all that it's cracked out to be. I feel like there's some stuff missing. Like, I'm pretty sure the PlayStation 5 is going to get better over time because it's going to get new software updates and new features are going to open up and people will be able to tap into more of that power. I'm just curious, you know, Sam's or Xbox Series X says it came out and says, hey, we're full RDNA 2. On the other case, Sony hasn't said, they've been quiet about what's really in the PlayStation 5. For all we know, this is RDNA 1 with RDNA 2 features, and if anybody else watched the AMD, you know, when they talked about, you know, RDNA 2 as opposed to RDNA 1, you know, the performance gains of how they change things, that would put the Xbox, I think it was like almost a 50% gain gen on gen for performance from, you know, one card to another, 18% or 50. It was a big enough percent gain to where it made sense, you know, that like, wow, you know, that's incredible. So if you take that and then say you have PlayStation 5 with RDNA 1 DNA and then but added, you know, some RDNA 2 features to it, that right there already out of the gate is going to gimp the PlayStation 5 in performance and stuff compared to the Xbox Series X. And then the other stuff Sony filled in with first party technology to, you know, to make the PlayStation 5. What we're seeing right now with Biomutant is basically where things, like Capcom, they're a pretty decent developer. I mean, Resident Evil Village launched pretty seamless experience. I didn't encounter any bugs. I didn't get stuck. It didn't shut down on me. I didn't have any problems playing through that game on the Xbox Series X in ray tracing mode. Like, it was a seamless, nice experience. Like, I did not have any problems. I guess the PlayStation 5 version had, you know, slowdown and other stuff, you know, like was dropping more frames and stuff when you get to a certain part in the game. And then you have Returnal coming out at 1080 freaking p. Like, I could tell right when I turned that game on, it was ugly. Like, I could tell that. I could see that. Right when I turned the game on, I was like, wow, this is not a $70 experience. I can't believe all these other reviewers are out there saying that, wow, this game is great and it looks great and everything. Like, seriously, man, I didn't have nothing to do with that. I wasn't part of that. I posted my review. I gave you my honest opinion. I said, I don't think it's a $70 game. It should be $50 like the medium was. I think that's a fair price for it because Returnal is, you know, the gameplay is pretty fun. Like, when I played it, I don't think it's balanced. I think it's kind of broken. I don't know if they fixed it yet. I'll probably wait, you know, another month or two before I try to jump back in there and see if anything's changed. But as it sits, Returnal was, in my opinion, was a flop. I don't understand how people are like, oh, it's Game of the Year material. No, it's definitely not Game of the Year material. That game is not Game of the Year material. I went into the house when you first get into the house, and if you walk up to the table and you turn and look right in the mirror, right in front of that table, like, that picture looks so freaking terrible. That was the poorest looking visuals I've ever seen. I mean, you saw reflections of Hitman 2 when you first go into the house in New Zealand and you look in the mirror there, it's like perfect, all crisp and clean, like an exact match. That is not the case with Returnal. I took a picture of it with my cell phone right next to my TV and I posted it on Twitter and everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's not fair. You zoomed in way too far. No, I didn't zoom in. I literally put my phone up to the TV and took a picture of what I saw, and it looked pretty close to what I saw just looking at my TV from 3 feet away. Like, it really does not look good. This generation, like right now, if there's untapped power in the PS5 that Sony hasn't like released, you know, like the Xbox is sitting on, you know, and hasn't released yet, because of like missing RDNA 2 features from AMD. Like that's gonna definitely matter here in the future and stuff. But like right now, out of the gate with these cross-gen titles starting to poke holes in Sony's, marketing and everything else for this. Like I don't think people should be taking this out on the developers who develop Biomutant. Biomutant only being able to run at 1080p at 60 frames a second by using the PS4 version on the PS4 Pro. The PS5 needs a native app to unlock that potential. It just has to be there. That game running on PS4 Pro code isn't going to be able to access any of the features that the PlayStation 5 has to offer. The only thing it's going to be able to do is run the backward compatible version by using boost mode the best it can. And if the developers have that with a 1080p upscaled, code for it so that it can upscale higher than that, the PlayStation 5 will be able to do that. I mean, we've seen that with the backward compatible, like Sekiro and like other games. We've seen the PlayStation 5 be able to tap into that power. We've seen it be able to push frame rates up to 60 frames a second, no problem. Like we've seen that. Do I think that the PlayStation 5 version of BioWare or Biomutant is going to run native 4K at 60 frames a second with all the bells and whistles of next gen? I don't know. Is the Xbox Series X version going to be able to run native 4K with all the bells and whistles, if they put ray tracing or any of that kind of stuff in there at 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second? I don't know. Like nobody knows. This is a last gen game running on next gen hardware. My understanding of how smart delivery works for the Xbox Series X is that even though it's just an Xbox One X title with Xbox One X code, my understanding, because I'm pretty sure that the video they showed of the Xbox One X version of Biomutant was running at 1080p at 60 frames a second. I'm pretty sure that was the video they showed for that. So I don't know if that was dynamic or not, if it was being upscaled. And if it was dynamic, but it was only holding at 1080p at 60 frames a second on the Xbox One X, I find that kind of hard to believe. I think that would be fluctuating more, up the spectrum. I mean, if you take, and this is why I think that's the case. If you take Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is a much bigger, well, I don't know if it's a much bigger open world, but it's a pretty big open world, and that game was only going to be and that game can only do up to 4K 30 frames a second, and it was up to like what 2088p on the, like, looking at the sky on the Xbox One X. So if that game can only get to there, but Biomutant can only run 60 frames a second at 1080p on the One X, I don't think that's the case. So I feel like that was, kind of locked in there. But the way I understand smart delivery is that developers can tweak the code a little bit to add extra features for the Series X version, even though it doesn't have a native version. It just has tweaked code that's smart. How did they phrase that? They made it so that there's code that they can put in there that the console will see and be console aware to be able to use different assets and different stuff. So yes, maybe, I mean, all of that's probably baked into the Xbox One X version to be able to run dynamically, but that code is still in there. In the Xbox Series X there's code to make it aware that it's running that program, so that it will boost it up. There's been some other games that have used that, and it's worked really well, like Mass Effect Legendary Edition that came out. That's a last gen version. It's not a next gen XX, is it? Yeah, I think that actually is, because it is up there in that category. But that runs at 120 frames a sec. Well, not 120 frames locked, but I mean, it does get up and down there, where the PlayStation 5 version doesn't do that. And It's a PlayStation, or I think that is a PlayStation 4 version. I just know that there's a way that they can tweak code so that it can use more next gen features, even though it's not a native app for the Xbox Series X. So yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to see anybody else blaming the Biomutant developers for this. This is a Sony problem. This is a Sony hardware problem. Sony created this PlayStation 5 and developed it and designed it the way they did, thinking that, oh well, this is the way we've always done things. And that's the thing. Sony's stuck in the past, and Microsoft is like, hey, how do we innovate? How do we make this better? Xbox now has the full backing of Microsoft. Like, this isn't even a competition anymore. If Xbox wanted to buy and sell Sony, they probably could. That's just the thing. I don't see Phil Spencer or Xbox trying to go after Sony and be like, oh yeah, we're going to take you out, because competition is healthy. The better the competition is on PlayStation, the better the better the development, the better things are going to get. And that's why we're seeing Xbox Series X with all of these new features. Microsoft is a software company. That's what they do. They create things to make things better. And Xbox, being a closed ecosystem, it's easier for them to develop things like FPS boost, auto HDR, smart delivery, just all of these things that make the Xbox a better place to play, a better investment if you're buying digital video games. If you're buying digital games in the Xbox, like, chances are the next Xbox is going to be able to run those games too, as well as enhance them right out of the box at a system level. So that there obviously is the clear choice for gamers who like to buy their games and buy them digitally. Your Xbox purchases, your investment is better. You got more of a chance of your investment being respected by Microsoft than you do PlayStation. Clearly, the PlayStation 5 basically runs PS4 Pro games the way they ran on the PS4 Pro, but just being able to use the boost mode. Like, yeah, I mean, like that. It's basically, that's what it does, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, at least it's got backwards compatibility. But when you got the other side of the fence, like kicking a home run with backward compatibility, it just makes you wonder, like, is PlayStation 5 really a next-gen console? Or because the Xbox has got far more next-gen features, in my opinion, than the PlayStation 5 out of the gate. But the PlayStation 5 did come out with exclusive games already built for the PlayStation 5. And that's awesome. And I give them props for that. And I've bought them. I bought them all. I have them. Like, I'm not against Sony in like any way, shape, or form. Like, I love Sony. I love their games. I completely support them. But Microsoft is the one that's going to get all my third party purchases this generation, and that sucks for Sony, because now they're going to have to sell me their exclusives to recoup the cost of the console, the subsidy for the console, because we all know that these gaming companies subsidize the cost of these consoles, because that Xbox Series X is definitely worth the money. PlayStation 5, yeah, I mean, Resident Evil looks pretty good on both consoles, so it is what it is. Like, I'm not saying that the PlayStation 5 is weak. I'm just saying that it could have been better. Am I wrong? Like, let me know in the description, if you or in the comments if you think I'm wrong. If you think that the PlayStation 5 is the bestest console ever made, let me know that too. But if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.